Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. The US says it recognizes and supports Pakistan's continued efforts to meet its obligations under the Financial Action Task Force. State Department spokesperson Ned Price noted Islamabad made significant progress by addressing 26 of 27 action items. He said Washington encourages Pakistan to continue working with the FATF to swiftly complete the remaining action item. China has rejected US and its allies' accusations that Beijing conducted a global cyber hacking campaign. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian says the allegations were fabricated out of thin air for political goals. In a press briefing, he said the technical details Washington has provided do not constitute a complete chain of evidence. In Afghanistan, at least 3 rockets have landed near the presidential palace in Kabul during the Eid al-Adha prayers. The Interior Ministry says there are no immediate reports of injuries. The Taliban have denied involvement, saying they are in the state of defense during the Eid and will also release dozens of Afghan soldiers. Millions of Muslims in Saudi Arabia and a number of other countries are celebrating Eid al-Adha today, commemorating the acts of Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him. The day marks the spirit of sacrifice for the will of God. The festival also propagates the virtue of charity and sharing in the society. A South Korean Paralympian fell into a crevasse and went missing after scaling 8,047-meter broad peak in northern Pakistan. According to the country's alpine club, Kim Hong Bin had reached the top of the mountain but met bad weather on the way down. Broad Peak was the final summit in Kim's quest to climb the world's 14 tallest peaks. Those were the headlines and detailed stories. Right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. The US says it recognizes and supports Pakistan's continued efforts to meet its obligations under the Financial Action Task Force. This comes a day after Pakistan slammed India's admission of using the forum to keep Islamabad in the grey list. State Department noted Islamabad made significant progress on its first action plan. At a press briefing, spokesperson Ned Price said Pakistan largely addressed 26 of the 27 action items. Price said Washington encourages Pakistan to continue working with the FATF to swiftly complete the remaining action item. He added the US hopes Islamabad will expeditiously implement its new second action plan. China has rejected US and its allies' accusations that Beijing conducted a global cyber hacking campaign. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian says the allegations were fabricated out of thin air for political goals. In a press briefing, he said the technical details Washington has provided do not constitute a complete chain of evidence. Meanwhile, in a statement, the Chinese embassy in Norway said Beijing is a staunch defender of cybersecurity. It said Beijing is willing to cooperate with all relevant parties to jointly combat illegal activities in cyberspace. The mission added, China has requested the Norwegian side to provide evidence for the claim. Earlier, US President Joe Biden said he believed Beijing did not carry out the cyber attacks but is protecting the perpetrators. And for more on this, we have with us Mr. Einar Tenjin, political analyst, joining us from Beijing. Mr. Tenjin, thank you for your time at Indus News. The US and its allies have been openly stating that they will amp up their actions against China. These allegations come within 24 hours of the massive Israeli spy operation paired with India and other US allies. So is this a coincidence, or is there anything more to this?
Well, it would be speculation to say it's coincidence, but it is highly unusual timing. You have to remember that this whole statement is based on a finding by the UK intelligence that it's highly likely, quote, that this Happening group that they identified as a culprit in this Microsoft hack was somehow affiliated with the Chinese. That's less than what you would expect from in terms of a dispositive finding that a whole international community was going to jump on board with. So yes, it is very curious about the timing.
So, Mr. Tandon, the headlines are everywhere, but we know very little about the tangible proof of these accusations. Has any sort of evidence of these or any other such accusations ever been shared with Beijing?
No, they haven't. Beijing has categorically denied these irresponsible, what they call, quote, irresponsible accusations, end quote. But what we have is, when you start reading through the articles, you'll see the conflation of two separate issues. There was a group of 4 Chinese who were indicted by the U.S. government for hacks between 2015 and 2018. 2011 and 2018. And they say that these individuals were associated with the Chinese government. There's been no finding of guilt as of this point, only allegations. But this is completely separate from what the UK has alleged in terms of these Microsoft leaks. So at this point, they're reporting them together, and I think it's confusing people. They think that 4 Chinese people associated with the government have been indicted in terms of these Microsoft leaks, and that is not the case. I find that, as a former somebody who worked in the prosecutor's office and also as a defense attorney, I find it highly irresponsible that they would not be identifying that these are merely allegations and that there has been no proof.
Okay, Mr. Tandon, Beijing has been very measured and rather conservative to its response to the onslaught of allegations by the U.S. and its allies. Why do you think that is so?
Well, I think Beijing has caught on to the idea that the U.S. every 2 to 3 days is going to lob some sort of accusation against China, and that it's not, wise to simply allow the U.S. to press China's buttons on these issues. It's just not possible that China does something bad every 2 to 3 days. And it's just kind of laughable. I mean, the Chinese look at this, they view this in light of Snowden's revelations about the U.S. government hacking into everybody, including their domestic, people, and spying on them. So, I mean, this idea that the U.S. is accusing others of what it does itself, that is the kind of disinformation campaign that would link up to your first question, which is, why is this very flimsy accusation being echoed by so many people at a time just after Israel has been proven to have sold the software that has been used to suppress journalists, spy on governments and individuals worldwide.
Mr. Einat Tandon, a political analyst joining us from Beijing. Thank you very much for your time at Indus News. We really appreciate that. And now moving on to Afghanistan, where at least 3 rockets have landed near the presidential palace in Kabul during the Eid al-Adha prayers. The Interior Ministry says there are no immediate reports of injuries. President Ashraf Ghani continued with the prayers despite multiple loud explosions and later delivered a speech. The Taliban have denied involvement in the attack on the heavily fortified palace. Spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid said the fighters are in a state of defense during the Eid holiday. Unlike some previous years, the Taliban have not officially declared a ceasefire for Eid this week. However, earlier the group announced releasing dozens of Afghan soldiers on the religious occasion day. Turkey has called for the U.S. funding so that it can agree to guard the Kabul airport after the foreign troops withdraw.
President Tayyip Erdogan says Turkey will carry out the mission as long as it is assisted financially, diplomatically and logistically. Speaking in northern Cyprus, Erdogan acknowledged that the Taliban had reservations, but he said Ankara looks at the security proposal positively. The president also said Turkey will hold talks with the Taliban.
ve Doha'dan
In the meantime, the Taliban has some qualms. He will hold talks with the Taliban over this period, like they held some talks with the United States. They should be able to hold these talks with Turkey more comfortably.
Meanwhile, the US says Pakistan has the potential to play a crucial role in the Afghan peace process. Earlier, Prime Minister Imran Khan and US Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad emphasized a negotiated settlement in Afghanistan. During a meeting in Islamabad, the two sides said continued war poses a risk to the entire region.
Moving on, in Iraq, at least 35 people have been killed and over 60 others injured in a suicide attack near Baghdad. Security officials say the IED blast took place in a busy market a day before the Eid al-Adha holiday. They fear the death toll may rise as some wounded people are in critical condition. Militant group ISIS has claimed the responsibility for the suicide bombing. It said one of its militants blew up his explosive vest among the crowd. Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi held an urgent meeting with top security commanders to discuss the attack. Iraq security media cell said an investigation has been launched. Israeli army says its artillery has struck targets inside Lebanon in response to an alleged rocket attack. In a tweet, the military said its defense system shot down one rocket while another fell in an open area. Meanwhile, Damascus says Syria's air defenses also intercepted an Israeli attack on the Al-Safira area of the southern Aleppo. Syrian state media said the defenses downed most of the missiles that targeted a number of locations. It said the strikes caused material damage. The strikes in Syria are the first since a new Israeli government led by Naftali Bennett came to power last month. Now, Russia has warned the US against the potential deployment of hypersonic missiles in Europe. In a tweet, the Russian embassy in the US said any such act will be extremely destabilizing. The embassy said short flight time of missiles would leave Russia with little or no time to decide. It said the deployment would raise the likelihood of inadvertent conflict. Earlier, Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby called the Russian tests of a hypersonic missile a great risk. On Monday, Moscow successfully tested its own Zircon missile capable of carrying nuclear charge. Millions of Muslims in Saudi Arabia and a number of other countries are celebrating Eid al-Adha today, commemorating the acts of Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him. The day celebrates the spirit of sacrificing one's most prized possessions for the will of God Almighty. Animals, typically goats, lambs, cows, or camels, are sacrificed to mark the occasion. The three-day celebrations preach the virtue of sharing and charity in society. The event, celebrated on the 10th of last Islamic month, Zulhajj, also marks the end of the annual Hajj pilgrimage. Pilgrims will perform the ritual of stoning the devil at the Jamarat area in Mina. More stories to follow, but right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back. Brazil has registered over 580 deaths from COVID-19 and more than 15,000 cases. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 4 million lives and infected over 190 million people. More in this report.
A number of countries are again reporting higher infections, dampening the hopes of normalcy. In the United States, a rapid increase in cases is fueling fears of outbreak resurgence as highly contagious Delta variant takes hold. The United States has also risen the risk of travelling to the United Kingdom to its highest level. While in the UK, vaccine certificates are made compulsory for crowded venues to boost jab uptake among young people. As the Delta variant spreads in Australia as well, Victoria and South Australia states extended lockdowns.
But we need more time, and that's why on the advice of the Chief Health Officer we will extend these lockdowns for a further 7 days. We are all going to work very, very hard to have Victoria begin the process of opening up at midnight next Tuesday the 27th, so 7 days from midnight tonight.
The situation in Southeast Asia remains worst. Philippines intensified patrols along the borders with neighboring states, which have extreme surges in Delta variant. In Indonesia, COVID-19 cases are currently among the world's highest due to the Delta variant, despite the strictest restrictions. While in Bangladesh, train stations are jam-packed with little to no adherence to COVID-19 SOPs as thousands head to homes for Eid.
Most of my relatives live in the village. Only my family lives in Dhaka. Now, as my father, mother and brothers live at home in the village, they are waiting for us to join them to celebrate Eid together. Although it's during the coronavirus pandemic, I am expected to go.
Iran's capital, Tehran, has entered a week-long lockdown as the country struggles with another surge in the outbreak. Meanwhile, International Labour Organization said globally the women have been hardest hit by the pandemic job losses. In a report, the global body said only men's employment is likely to return to 2019 levels this year.
COVID-19 has claimed another 37 lives in Pakistan over the past 24 hours. The health ministry says the death toll has reached 22,848. The ministry said more than 2,100 people tested positive for the virus overnight. It said Pakistan's positivity rate has once again climbed to 5.25%. The country has so far reported nearly 994,000 infections, out of which more than 921,000 people have recovered so far. The ministry said there are nearly 50,000 active cases and about 2,700 are in critical condition. China and ASEAN president have pledged to work for a greater level of strategic partnership on the 30th anniversary of the ties. In a statement, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said China and ASEAN have set a model for cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region. Li added, over the past 30 years, China and ASEAN countries have stood together through good and bad times. President of ASEAN, Sultan Haji Hassanal Bolkiah, said the ties became one of the most strategic and comprehensive partnership. Bolkiah also expressed confidence that ASEAN-China strategic partnership will create a better future for the region. The United States and Jordan have agreed to strengthen their cooperation. President Joe Biden met with Jordan's King Abdullah at the White House and reaffirmed Washington's support to Amman. The White House said the two leaders discussed defense ties and the Middle East peace efforts. In a statement, it said Biden voiced his support for a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The U.S. president also announced the delivery of more than 500,000 COVID-19 vaccines to Jordan. For his part, King Abdullah said Amman will continue to play a positive role in the region amid ongoing challenges. Lebanon's President Michel Aoun says parliamentary consultations to choose a new prime minister will begin on July the 26th. Last week, Prime Minister-designate Saad Hariri resigned after negotiations with Aoun failed to form the new government. Lebanon has been run by a caretaker government for nearly a year. The nation is now facing what it described as one of the worst financial crises in modern times. Meanwhile, a delegation from the U.S. Treasury Department is also in Beirut. U.S. Embassy says the delegation will meet with the different stakeholders to discuss issues of corruption, illicit finance, and counter-terrorist measures. Mali's interim president Assimi Goïta has been targeted in an attempted stabbing attack in the capital, Bamako. His office says two armed men attacked the president with a knife in a mosque during Eid al-Adha prayers. The president remained unharmed and the attackers were apprehended. Goïta led a coup last August, ousting elected President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta following mass protests. Haiti's interim Prime Minister Claude Joseph is set to step down this week and hand over power to Ariel Henry. Joseph has nominally led Haiti as an acting Prime Minister since the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. Henry was appointed Prime Minister by Moïse 2 days before the killing, but had yet to be sworn in. A foreign ministry's official said the power transition will take place as soon as possible in a ceremony. Earlier, Joseph told the Washington Post in an interview that he and Henry had met privately over the past week. He said he had agreed to step down for the good of the nation and is willing to transfer power as quickly as possible. In Peru, socialist Pedro Castillo has been declared president-elect. The Electoral Authority announced the verdict after reviewing the claims of fraud by his right-wing rival Keiko Fujimori. During a televised ceremony, elections chief Jorge Salas proclaimed Castillo as the republic's president. Addressing his supporters in the capital Lima, Castillo called for national unity. He said he will work towards the country's economic stability and prosperity. Castillo will now be sworn in as the president on the 28th of July. Fujimori has accepted the result but said she had been cheated. In the U.S. state of Oregon, the nation's largest active wildfire has scorched more than 300,000 acres, prompting thousands of evacuations. Authorities say over 2,000 firefighters, along with helicopters and aeroplane tankers, are battling the blaze. The bootleg fire has forced at least 2,000 residents in the region to abandon their homes. The flames have burned at least 67 homes and 100 outbuildings, while threatening thousands more. Only 22% of the blaze has been contained so far, as gusty winds and hot weather continue to fan the flames. Meanwhile, in California, the raging Tamarack fire has prompted more evacuations in Alpine County. The fire has burned through 23,000 acres and remains uncontained despite efforts in full swing. Russian planes are seeding clouds as an attempt to extinguish fires raging in the Siberian region of Yakutia. Authorities said the blaze has spread dangerously close to a hydroelectric power plant. Federal Forestry Agency's head Alexander Agafonov said the natural site Lena Pillars has been almost clear of fire spots. Fires have flared across Russia amid a heat wave, tearing through over 1.5 million hectares of land in Yakutia. Siberia's Environment and Forest Ministry said around 123 fires raged over an area of more than 885,000 hectares. For a 97-year-old Ukrainian tennis enthusiast, Leonid Stanislavski, it is next to impossible to find a worthy adversary in his age group. But this could not stop him from participating in championships for seniors and playing younger competitors. Stanislavski was 30 years old when his colleague introduced him to the sport. Since then, he has trained 3 times a week in his hometown of Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine.
It is an elegant type of sport. It is good physical exercise. It is a beautiful game. And there is one more thing about tennis. You can play tennis no matter what age you are. I started playing tennis when I was 30 years old. I am now 97 years old and keep playing.
A Guinness World Record holder for being world's oldest tennis player, Stanislavski is training hard for the Super Seniors World Championship this year. For the first time, the International Tennis Federation has introduced a 90 and over age group in the tournament on his request. Stanislavski says the secret to his longevity is a mixture of good genes and regular sport.
No matter I was 90 or 95 years old, my routine did not change. I developed my personal routine. As I age, I sleep more. I never miss an opportunity to sleep. Sometimes I do power naps during the day. When I have a training scheduled, I sleep at least 10 hours during the night.
Stanislavski starts each morning with gymnastics and a series of push-ups and pull-ups. Besides tennis, he is a passionate fan of swimming and dreams of making a parachute jump. He says his ultimate goal is to live to 100 years and taking on Roger Federer. And other business updates, European stocks are trading higher, looking to rebound after global markets retreated on fears of a COVID-19 resurgence. The CAC 40 in Paris is leading the gains, rising over 1%. London's FTSE, the Pan-European Stock 600 and Frankfurt's DAX added close to 1%. Italy's FTSE MIB has risen more than 0.5%. Earlier, all major bourses in Asia-Pacific region fell. And that is all for now. With the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.